Okay, so this is a video on how to create charts. So let's start with the easy one. So we've got days of the week and we've got the colors here. Let me center these just so they're a little bit easier to read. Okay, so when I do these charts, I don't want to include the totals of the rows or the totals of the columns. I only want the data because the chart itself is essentially going to create totals. So what I want to do is click and hold at the top left corner. I'll do that again. Click and hold, drag down and over so that I'm only selecting that data that is inside the chart, not the grand totals on the rows, not the grand totals on the columns. Then very simply, I hit insert and chart. So it has Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel has some intelligence in it, and it sort of looks at your data and says, well, what kind of chart does this person probably want? It doesn't do that because it's a machine. So what it really does is it says when this sort of data exists, what is the most common type of chart that people do? Anyway, so we're going to do a column chart. And there are basically three different types of column charts. And they all kind of tell you different things. So part of this exercise is you learning which chart better answers your question. So this one is called a grouped column chart, and you can see that they're groups. So first thing I want to do is this is green, red, yellow. Well, red is red, yellow is yellow, but green always ends up being blue. I don't really know why. But by clicking on the blue column, I can then come down here and go to fill color, which is set to auto, and I can set it to green. And that way, green is green. Okay, so now I've got my chart, they're grouped. Well, let's look at the other kinds of column charts. So, this is another kind of column chart where it's the other data, but that doesn't make any sense. Well, I guess it makes sense, but it's not helpful to have it be horizontal instead of vertical. So let's try the other. So if we scroll down in here, you can see I've now got a stacked column chart is a choice. So with a stacked column chart, with a stacked column chart, it's nice because it tells me, first of all, just by the height of the stack, which day has the most clicks, right? So I find that to be helpful. I can still compare the relative value of the reds because they are fairly different on each one, just visually. It's harder to compare the relative value of the yellows. But one of the things that you can do here is you can come in here and let me find it. I'm going to pause for a second while I find it. Okay, I found it. So series is referring to these different data sets, right? So these data sets are called series. So I can come in here, or these different data levels, the red series, the yellow series, the green series. So I can come in here. Let's just go to apply to all series for right now. And I can hit data labels. I find this to be very useful because it gives me the ability to compare. So it's hard to visually compare the yellow, but by putting that on there, it makes it easier to visually compare the yellow. So this data labels under series, I think, is very helpful. They have this total data labels too, which gives you the total. I don't think that's quite as helpful because I know the totals visually, but feel free to put them on there if you like it. Trend lines sometimes are helpful, sometimes aren't. The idea that each of these values is trending up is somewhat interesting, but it's not really that interesting. But they're fun to play with. So the other thing I like for readability is to go down here to grid lines and ticks and just sort of decide. So major grid lines, that means these lines that are going across, you really need those just so you can see how things compare. I think it's helpful to put in the minor grid lines as well. I like these ticks on the side there too. Because the whole purpose of a graph is to compare things, and I think it just makes it easier to compare things. And you can sort of change the thickness and some other things about them. So I would really suggest you go about playing with a lot of these different items here. But let's look at one more chart type, and that would be the stacked to 100. So this is a stacked column chart that we're looking at now. This is a 100% stacked column chart. And so it's the same data, but what it says, if we just say we know that there are fewer clicks on a Friday than on a Thursday, but given the clicks, what is the relative percentage of each, right? And so in this case, that relative percentage is largest on a Monday, right? So when we were looking on this before, Thursday is the largest number of clicks, but of all of the people that click on Monday, the highest percentage is green. So it's different to say which day has the most green clicks as to out of all of the days, which day are people happiest? Well, that would actually be Monday, which is a little counterintuitive. I think in this case, it's really important to have these numbers so that you can see that, this shows you that on Thursday or on Tuesday, 347 or Thursday, 351 people clicked. So Thursday's interesting because it's by far the most people, well, not by far, but anyway, the most people clicked green on Thursday. However, it's the lowest percentage of green of the whole week because it's the day when people click the most. So Thursday actually has the most red clicks percentage-wise and quantity-wise. So anyway, I think this graph is super interesting. The question of why people click less on a Friday might simply be answered by the fact that I don't have as many classes on Fridays, right? So I think in this case, looking at the percentages is actually super valuable. Okay, those are the 3 bar charts. Whee!